The day Blessing gave birth to Emmanuel, her joy knew no bounds. Finally, after 10 years of barrenness, God has finally heard her prayers. Her mother-in-law, Mama Ebuka, would no longer have the mouth to mock her and call her all sorts of names. Blessing, Emmanuel was her world. It was everything she wanted and more. She vowed to do everything humanly possible to make him happy because he was her first food and the miracle that shamed her enemies. The day Blessing arrived from the hospital after her delivery, she summoned all her domestic staff and warned them to be extremely careful with her son. This is a warning to all of you. As you all can see, I am not smiling. I want you guys to be very careful when dealing with Emmanuel. Don't touch him or scold him even if he does anything wrong. Leave him to me, I will raise him the way I want. Blessing wasted no time in firing any staff who mishandled Emmanuel's belongings. That's how much she loved him. As Emmanuel grew older, he became very attached to Blessing since she was always around him. His father, Ebuka, wasn't always around since he had to cater for the family. However, by the time Emmanuel turned 3, even Blessing started to notice his unusual dependence, and he wouldn't play with the other children in the compound. Instead, he followed Blessing around, talking at a wrapper and demanding her attention. If she dared to sit with Ebuka and laugh at one of his jokes, Emmanuel would stomp his feet, throw his toys, and scream, "Mama, come back!" Ebuka would often scold him on the spot, but Blessing intervened. "He's just a child. Stop scolding him, Blessing. We're encouraging this behavior. He's not a baby anymore. Let him learn some independence," but Blessing brushed him off. "He's just showing how much he loves me. Don't be jealous," she said, "that a chick that stays too long under the mother's wings would forget to fly. You must let this boy grow." However, Blessing ignored Ebuka's advice. Blessing continued to adore her son in ways that puzzled even Ebwe. She did crazy things just to make him happy, even if they were to his detriment. "All I want is for my son to be happy," she would often say. While most mothers encourage their son to stand on their 2 feet, Blessing was determined to keep Emmanuel wrapped tightly in her arms. One day, after Blessing finished having her bath, she walked up to Emmanuel, who was playing on the bed with his iPad. Blessing wasn't even putting on any clothes, and she wasn't concerned at all. Her, Emmanuel was innocent and could not differentiate between right and wrong. "Hello, my love. How are you doing today?" Blessing smiled as she spoke. Emmanuel innocently dropped his iPad and started playing with his mother's dangling 2 oranges. "Mommy, what is this?" Emmanuel asked innocently, pointing at Blessing's 2 oranges. Blessing smiled and asked, "Do you like them?" And Jewel nodded his head in affirmation. Blessing didn't scold him. Instead, he allowed him to keep playing with them. One cool evening, as Blessing sat on her bed, playing with her son, her maid walked in to take Emmanuel to have his bath. Immediately, Emmanuel sighted the maid. He started crying and screaming, "Mommy, I don't want her to beat me. I don't want her, she always pinches me whenever she's beating me." Without confirming if her son's claims were true, Blessing fired the maid on the spot. "Madam, you can't just sack me like that now, your son is lying," the maid protested. "How dare you call my son a liar? Didn't I warn you to be careful with him? Get out of my sight, and I don't want to see you here by tomorrow," Blessing shouted. That night, Blessing took it upon herself to beat her son. Every day, as the day went by, their love for each other deepened. It was more than just mother and son love. They spent time together, did everything together, and even slept on the same bed whenever Ebuka was out of town. However, one fateful day, as Blessing was having her shower, Emmanuel demanded he beat with her. Blessing didn't think twice before opening her arms wide to welcome him. And from that day onward, it became their daily routine. They showered together and even dressed up together. In fact, they lived like husband and wife. But one thing Blessing wasn't aware of is that love, when unchecked, can lead to a disastrous end. As they continued spending time together, Emmanuel started acting strange. He would often point at his mother's 2 oranges and other parts of her body, asking endless questions. But Blessing never saw the need to caution him. To her, her son was being wise and smart. One day, Blessing's mother, Mama Shinonso, visited her. The old woman couldn't help but notice the uncanny relationship between the mother and son. Blessing. What is this I'm seeing? You shower with your son? Do you know the danger of what you are doing? Mama, he is just a child. He doesn't even know the difference between right and wrong. Blessing replied, you are spoiling this child. This is very wrong, Blessing. Don't do what you will regret later. Mama, tell her off. I'm tired of talking, Shinonso shouted from the living room. By the time Emmanuel turned 15, the innocent attachment that once seemed harmless had transformed into something disturbing. He was no longer the shy boy who hid behind his mother. He had become bold, aggressive, and territorial, especially when it came to Blessing. His school teachers complained about his attitude, particularly towards male staff. He would talk back, challenge the authority, and even fight them. He's just strong-willed, Blessing said dismissively whenever a report of Emmanuel's bad behavior was brought to her attention. However, this was only the beginning of more trouble. Emmanuel had developed a habit of phoning Blessing wherever she went. When she visited the supermarket or attended private meetings, all Emmanuel insisted on accompanying her, looking sternly at anyone who dared to speak too long with her. One afternoon, the family's neighbor Mr. Okafo made a casual remark that turned into a nightmare. Blessing, you are as beautiful as the sun, Mr. Okafo said cheerfully. Emmanuel, who had been standing nearby, froze. His expression darkened, and before anyone could react, he longed at Okoye, shoving him against the wall. Don't ever talk to her like that, he shouted. Shinonso immediately rushed out and pulled Emmanuel away. What is wrong with you? He yelled, but Blessing said nothing, clenching his fist in anger. That night, Shinonso sat Blessing down. Blessing, can you see it now? This boy is not acting like his son. He's acting like a man fighting for his wife. He's just protective of me. It's not as serious as you are making it, Blessing replied. It is serious, Shinonso snapped, slamming his fist on the table. He needs discipline, and you need to stop coddling him, but Blessing didn't listen. Instead, she only deepened the bond between herself and Emmanuel. When he started bringing her flowers and calling her his queen, she laughed and praised him for being sweet. Shinonso wasn't pleased with everything going on between Blessing and Emmanuel. He was helpless in the situation because his advice fell on deaf ears. He thought of what he could do to remedy the situation, but no idea came to mind. However, one day, he decided to man up and act like the head of the family. This is getting out of hand. I'm not against Emmanuel being close to Blessing. I'm certainly not jealous of their relationship. I'm very sure of that. But what I don't understand is their extreme love for each other. How can a mother and son be kissing each other in a romantic way and even showering together at this age? No, this has to stop. That day, Shinonso placed stricter rules for Emmanuel, forbidding him from following Shinonso everywhere and demanding he spend more time with his May-pairs. But every time Shinonso enforced a rule, Blessing would intervene on doing his efforts. For the first time in his marriage, Shinonso felt powerless. His warnings fell on deaf ears, and Blessing's blind devotion to Emmanuel left him stranded. 1. Afternoon, Blessing found herself alone in the living room sorting laundry when Emmanuel walked in with a notebook clenched to his chest. His movements were suspicious, as though he was hiding something. He immediately slipped the book into his school bag. Jewel, what is that? Blessing asked casually. Not a mama, he said, just school stuff. Blessing suspected something fishy, but let it slide. However, one fateful evening, while tidying Emmanuel's room, a hand brushed against the edge of his notebook. She hesitated for a while, but her curiosity got the better part of her. As she opened the book, she saw what she never imagined. The notebook was filled with disturbing and obsessive words about her damn white queen. One page read in both letters. No one can take her from me. I will honor life my father one day so I can spend the rest of my life with my queen. Blessing's hand trembled as she read the letters. She quickly closed the book and convinced herself that Emmanuel's love for her was too immense. Even as doubt crept into her heart, she clung to the things she had always believed in. A mother's love could never truly harm her child, but deep down, a whisper of fear told her she was wrong, very wrong. However, things took a drastic turn. For the worse one fateful evening. That day, Blessing was in the kitchen, humming a tune while preparing dinner. Emmanuel sat at the dining table, silently flipping through a book. He was unusually silent and dull. He didn't speak much, but stared at his mother uncontrollably. Emmanuel, are you okay? Blessing asked. He looked up at his mother with so much admiration in his eyes. Mama, he said with a soft voice, what is it? She asked, wiping her hands on a towel and sitting beside him. For a moment, Emmanuel said nothing. Then, he blotted out, I need to tell you something, Mama. Something I've been hiding from you for a very long time. Blessing's heart skipped a beat. Go on, she said. I love you, Mama. I mean, I truly love you. Blessing froze, her breath caught in her chest. Of course you love me, she said with a nervous laugh. I'm your mother. Emmanuel shook his head violently. No, Mama, it's not like that. It's more you are the only woman I have ever loved, Mama. I don't need anyone else. Blessing's heart started beating fast. She didn't want to believe what her ears heard. She stood up quickly, with her body shaking. Emmanuel, what are you saying? Before she could step away, Emmanuel grabbed her arm. You don't understand. We are meant to be together. You are mine, let go of me, Blessing shouted. Why are you acting like this, Mama? I see how you look at me. I know you feel it too. A Blessing managed to break free as she stumbled backward. Her mind raced as she recalled the notebook she found days earlier. She had hoped the disturbing writings were just a phase, a fleeting obsession, but now, as she stared into her son's eyes, she realized the truth was far worse. She quickly grabbed her phone and dialed Ebuka's number. Come home now, she shouted. It's Emmanuel. Something is wrong. Emmanuel's demeanor changed immediately. He slammed his fist on the table with anger. Why are you calling him? He doesn't understand us. He's always trying to take you away from me. Blessing tried to back away, but Emmanuel blocked her path. Minutes later, Ebuka burst through the door. What's going on here? Before Blessing could explain, Emmanuel longed at his father, shouting, She doesn't need you. She's mine. After a minute of struggling, Ebuka managed to subdue him. Blessing stood frozen with tears streaming down her face as the weight of her mistakes crushed her. In that moment, she realized that her blind love had nurtured something dark, something she could no longer control. After the incident, Ebuka couldn't hold back any longer. He blamed Blessing for everything. This is your fault, Blessing. I warned you over and over again, but you refused to listen. Look at what you have done to him. Look at what you have done to us. Blessing, who was already filled with guilt and shame, sat quietly on the edge of the couch. She couldn't bring herself to meet his gaze. Deep down, she knew she was wrong, but admitting it felt like a knife twisting in her chest. The next day, Blessing called her mother and explained everything to her. Mama Shinonso arrived the next day and suggested they take Emmanuel to a pastor for deliverance. While this was a good idea, it wasn't entirely the best option. Shinonso kicked against the idea and advised that Emmanuel be taken for therapy, but Mama Shinonso insisted on taking him to the church. The moment Pastor Simon sighted Emmanuel, he began to prophesy. This child is cursed. He was cursed by his spiritual mother. He needs deliverance. He needs to be set free. Deposit the sum of 500,000 naira now or face the consequences. Without hesitation, Blessing transferred the money to the account displayed on the wall. Pastor Simon began singing and calling the spirits from the water, fire, and earth to deliver Emmanuel. But Emmanuel stood firm with anger boiling inside him. Before anyone knew what was happening, he grabbed Pastor Simon and tore his priest's robe. Immediately, security was called and Emmanuel was taken out of the church. After that encounter, Blessing and her mother took Emmanuel to different pastors in the city, but it was to no avail. Instead, Emmanuel became worse. He moved his belongings into his mother's room and insisted they stay in the same room. My son, Why are you behaving like this? I'm your mother, you cannot have me. Don't you understand? It's an abomination. Mama, if I don't have you, then no one will. The more you keep taking me to those churches, the more my hatred for you increases. Don't make me hate you, Mama. Emmanuel spoke angrily and walked out of his mother, Blessing, sat speechless. She couldn't believe that her actions had turned her son into a beast. If I had known, I would not have exposed my body to him, I would not have showered with him, or even undressed in front of him. I should have drawn the lines. I felt I was doing him good. God, please save my son. Don't let him go astray. That night, she couldn't sleep. Her mind raced with thoughts of how to distance herself from Emmanuel. She thought of sending him to a boarding school, but knew he would oppose the idea. One night, things escalated even further when Emmanuel tried to force himself on Emmanuel. She screamed and ran out of the house. Luckily for her, Ebwe had just arrived home. He immediately called the police that night, and Emmanuel was locked up in his cell.
Thank you so much for watching and supporting my channel. Your time and encouragement mean the world to me. If you enjoyed this story and want to see more, please don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss an update. Your support helps me continue creating content that I hope you will love. Stay blessed, and I appreciate every one of you for being part of this journey with me. Let's keep growing together. Thank you again, and see you in the next video.